Thank you.
Hi everyone. I hope my connection is stable. I'm really happy to be with you. So my name is Spy. I'm from the Philippines. I don't know how much you know about my story and the history of the process. I've been doing this for about 18 years now, and I've been watching um, watching things happen around the world. Um, um, it's very hard to describe what it's been like to have been doing this work on and on. I hope to maybe share notes with you as to what we have learned, not just in an energetic and spiritual way, but also I think what I can contribute, having been here for this time, is to give a scientific backdrop, which in Europe would be really, really interesting. I think energy and spirit speaks to us in spontaneous ways, also quite personal, and you deserve to explore that within mystery when it comes to bringing this into the world. And now it's very interesting because this energy is now being worked into hospitals, into schools, companies, governments. Like right now, I'm in this hotel because I need to make a presentation to bring inner dance as a program to the largest prison system in the Philippines. There's only about 22,000 prisoners, and we're about to make a proposal. They actually proposed to us that we should bring inner dance to the prison system. So here in Asia, because this has been going on for so long, we're now able to bring things into the system. And partly the science was very important in allowing for the unlikeliest people who wouldn't be entering into a spiritual workshop an understanding of what are we doing, like what is happening. So I would love to speak about everything, but now we have 2 hours, and I can try to fit in what we might cover in maybe a 10-day training or 15-day training or 1-year training into 2 hours, just to give you an introduction of what is happening, especially in terms of what is happening in the body. I feel it would be good for people to have something concrete, something they can hold, something foundational and also structural. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my screen just so I can make certain things clear, especially those who might not have so much English. I find it really helpful to speak through the image. So this is my iPad. Like the music that I use for inner dance is here. But what we're going to open would be more of, I'll remove this. This is today's schedule for the training we're doing in the land right now. Okay, so let's try to look for an entry point by asking the question, what is taking place? If I was to define inner dance as a global movement that had spread across the world in the last 17 years, I would feel inner dance is an experience of an experience. Let's write that down. An experience of the an experience.
Sorry,
Yeah.
we can't see
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
screen.
That's true. Yeah, I realized I wasn't sharing the screen. Thank you. Yeah, sometimes the participants need to remind me because the iPad thing, it's not automatic. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I was showing my music, the music things we use in inner dance. But right now we're going into the notes. Okay. So this is the question, like what is it that's happening? And I really don't care what you call it anymore. It could be called inner dance or kundalini or life force energy or shakti or um, it doesn't matter what we name it. It matters that we are experiencing it and that we are probably also understanding it or perceiving it. Let me just write the word perception. It might be a little bit more apt for our conversation today. What are we experiencing and what are we perceiving is maybe the question. Sorry, my handwriting is so bad. What are we seeing? What are we feeling? Maybe. I feel what we are both going through in terms of mind and body is change. We are experiencing the body going through a transformation. So where I'm coming from is about 19 to 20 years ago, I went into a spiritual process. It's a very long process. I don't want to describe it, but I lived on an island for 2 years, an island in the Philippines called Kalipay. And basically, I experienced a spiritual awakening whereby my body and my mind, my mind and my body experienced something. It was an expansion. I became the universe. The universe is a little bit too big. Some people call it energy. Some people call it God, which is very interesting from an Italian perspective. What I actually was perceiving back then, before the experience came, I had an understanding that we are light. I like this word more than energy. I like this word because light can be understood both in a spiritual dimension. Light is energy, but it also can be understood from a scientific scientific domain. I feel light can act as a bridge where science can be spiritual and spirituality can be scientific. And I am sure a lot of you are interested in the meeting point so that they become the same. In maybe in Italy, it is time that science and spirit meets because it doesn't always find the meeting point. Anyway, in my story, I lived alone, eating only coconuts. And coconuts contains the most light in all known foods. It has the highest source of electricity in all known foods. So that's mostly what I ate. And then I experienced my body becoming light. I became the universe. I became energy. I became light. And a lot of the systems that are being studied across the world, it came about from my experience about 18 years ago. That's when inner dance began. So a lot of practices in Kundalini, what a lot of people are studying Kundalini began the process anyway, what's being shared in terms of how people are laying down with their eyes closed, listening to music, experiencing something about touch, and where words bring certain things into context. These are basically a list of different senses, different modalities of the ways the universe expresses. So there's a lot more that can be studied that brings about the changes or the transformations that takes place in the process. So we're studying what has unfolded or unraveled. So this for me is where it began. There's something about the movement, which is why we call it an inner dance. Okay, so we'll go back to this concept of light that has spiritual and scientific elements. When you experience it, you intuitively know that something is happening. You can feel that there is a sense of flow, and there's something in the flow. There's something in the energy flow that you don't need words in order to see something is happening that might, in fact, have an actual structure. This isn't always easy because the word flow is the absence of structure, right? When we say flow, normally we mean destroying structure, like water. Water flows, water doesn't seem to have structure until you see the molecules of water, and then you see the structure. If you spend a lot of time, like a lot of time, spend a lot of time in the flow, you too will see the structure. Like in the beginning, a lot of it is energy, and energy might shift into emotions. It will feel like there are many emotions. But if you spend even a lot more time, that emotion will become information. And the information is something you can perceive in terms of patterns, geometry, shapes, colors. And later on, when a lot of that comes together, flow shifts into form. And form is that which brings about information. Okay, so we clean up. Oh, there was another lecture today. We just make a new page. I can't erase that. These are really cute pictures. My daughter borrows my iPad, and she's creating these super cute. She's about 10. This is my favorite. It's so cute. She would sit down in an hour, and then I would come back, and I don't know where she comes up with these. Children are so cute. Okay, so let's make a new page. I'm very happy to share her art. Okay, so where are we? We're talking about light now. Light actually has a structure, and the structure is what you feel when you experience the energy. When you experience the energy, you would feel that something is going down and something is going up. There's an energy descent and there's an energy ascent somehow that is happening. And sometimes it might be more down, you know? Sometimes maybe it's more up. Let me just use red and green to signify the energy of the stop. Sometimes the energy stops, goes down, collapses. Sometimes the energy goes up. And you can bring synonymity here. It's either you talk about the process of birthing. A lot of people experience birth. A lot of people experience death. It could be growth. It could be deconstruction. So the language of energy has something to do with these two arrows. So as not to keep on circling or looping around the same generalizations or simplifications. Maybe a better way to draw the energy would be something like this. Okay, this is a better representation. This is an ancient symbol called the Vesika Pisces. And it signifies the energy of change, like something stable would go down, something would go up, and there's always these meeting points. So what this actually looks like is this. Some people might say, this looks like the DNA. but technically it's basically light. Light is light is a wave. A lot of people think it's one wave, but it's basically actually two waves. It's two waves. It's these two waves, and these two waves are made up of electricity and magnetism. So in many ways, the nature of the work has always been to wonder, how do we raise electricity? Magnetism is a force that binds things. It's like when you think of, let's say, gravity, gravitas, something holds you down. So electricity exists in every cell of the body, and it could have possible representations in the human construct that could be useful for us, so that this isn't just a conceptual thing. So we study this, and when we use music, you can tell that there are certain musics that allow for, you might call it a transformation, a healing, change, awakening, enlightenment, and so on and so forth. What is it in those musics that's able to do that? So there's something in the music that very verily goes up and down. There's a simultaneous energy in the music that brings about a trance-like state, what some people might call an expanded state or a heightened state of awareness. So we've been studying the musics that have worked. You can't really understand what the music is doing unless you have an understanding of the brain and the nervous system. You can only study music so much without the help of an understanding of how the nervous system and the music and the brain works. So let's make some connections, simple connections here so far based on what we've drawn out. Understanding that light is actually electricity and magnetism turning into each other. And understanding that the energy that we are actually experiencing is light going up and magnetism going down. We want to define what is the heightened state, the expanded state, the state, the inner state, the state of expansion. What we have found over the years is that the inner dance or Kundalini or what have you, it's actually a simultaneous co-activation of electricity and magnetism. Okay, and in music, this is basically when two dualities come together. Music has different representations. So, for example, when you think of music in relation to time, music has rhythm, and there are certain musics that have, let's say, faster rhythm, and some music have slower rhythm. So you probably would surmise that this kind of music, like faster music, would have certain effects. It would affect the human in a certain way. So it hasn't actually been long ago when science had studied the relationship, let's say, between music. This is something in music and the human system. You know, we used to think of music as something entertaining. Now, when you think of the human, there are different parts of the human. Let's say you have the brain. Music would affect the brain, yes? Music would affect the heart. Music would also affect, let's say, the breathing patterns. So in inner dance, we call this brain, breath, and blood. The lungs, the heart, the brain, they're all interconnected. So for example, when the heart, let's say the heart beats faster, let's say we're talking about the heart rate, what is going to happen to your breathing? So a lot of people have been interested in breath work for a long time now. When your heart starts beating faster, obviously your breathing, your breath rate, let's call it your breath rate, would go up because your body is needing more blood to flow through, carrying the hemoglobin using oxygen that travels through inhales and exhales. When there are changes in the breathing and the heart rate, there would also be changes in the brain state. And this is something we can perceive through what are called brainwave activity or neural oscillations. So if we are clear with that, then we have to be clear that we somehow are able to affect the human. And when we can affect the human, we can basically bring about something that many people don't realize is it's easier than we think. We often feel change is difficult, but what we're seeing in the experience in people's bodies, all this talk about brain, breath, and blood signifies that there is a growing understanding that we can affect something about the human. We can affect something about the human. And if we can affect the human, there is a process of change, particularly through the science of entrainment, that might become interesting for all of us to study, whether it be we be in the spiritual community or the scientific domains. Okay, so let's maybe what we do now is we concretize these concepts in a way that might be practical to hold. When we think about the changes in the human that takes place, it's not easy always to understand this, because the human being is basically made up of like so many parts, right? The human being is made up of like cells and brain cells, neurons, tissues, organs, endocrine systems, hormones, chemicals. Today, our central topic will be the chemistries, or let's say the chemistry of change.
Sorry, Pi, we see the overlap of two other windows.
Oh, really? I don't know what.
Or is it mine? Oh, no, it's mine. It's mine. Sorry.
It's you. Yeah, it's you.
Sorry.
Okay, so are we good now? A second? Okay.
Download della registrazione.
Come si fa adesso a farlo più grande?
Questo non...
Bisognerebbe fare questo, ingrandirlo. Ecco qua.
Quello verde. Basta anche mandarlo solo giù, su quello arancione, quello in mezzo.
Ma non lo prendo.
Ah, guarda perché sta facendo il download del video di prima. Vedi qua? Quando finisce?
Sì, però non dovrebbe essere qua sopra.
Beh, perché è un processo. Non finisce il download?
Non riesco a prenderlo. I have just a window on my laptop on top of it. And I don't know how to, it's a download of iCloud, but I cannot take the window away.
If you want to restart your computer, that's fine with me. Like, yeah.
Just.
Se il download no se completa, no se va a grabar. Entonces no vamos a tener la grabación. Porque está haciendo el download.
It should be.
Yes.
It seems that the iCloud download should be finishing soon, so I hope this window disappears. Ay, ay, ay.
Video e multispazio.
There's another laptop in this space. You could like move that as well.
There's another.
You can move.
No, anche uso
So it's like it's not covering all, but like a big portion of the screen, and I can do nothing about this window. But is it, I don't even know if it's your window or if it's mine, because it's just a laptop, and now, yes.
So it was a share screen thing though. I stopped sharing the screen. Let's try again if this is gonna work.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Bueno.
Okay,
Good.
perfect.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay. So I wanted to go straight more to the point. We want to concretize all of these concepts. For me to understand maybe a material conceptualization of light, because light seems to be like the least material. We would need to look for what would be the representation of light in the body, understanding that the body is made up of so many parts, whether it be like cells, we have our organs, maybe even atoms, right? Like, how do you have a relationship with the body that is one entity that is somehow organizing all of these parts? Just thinking about your brain alone, like your brain is made up of maybe right now 70 billion neurons, and the brain of a baby is 100 billion neurons. The thing that we wonder about is like something must be organizing all of these, and when we lay down into the experience, we perceive and experience that like this organization process is so infinitely complex and so sophisticated, and yet we don't need to be conscious about this. No wonder we need religion to have some kind of explanation that something is organizing not just one body, but the body of the earth or the body of the universe. God can do this. There could be many other names to describe this life force energy that begins to somehow act on its own. So that would be a starting point. And so two things. We need to consider light in the beginning, like we are made of light. This is what I was perceiving before I experienced the energy take over my whole body, and my body was filled with light. From like, let's say, because you are in Italy, Jesus once said that when your eye is single, your whole body will be filled with light, which means that when dualities come into oneness, we will experience lightness. So we want to see, let's decode, what does that mean? Light in the body is organized by what? It's organized by the brain, because the brain organizes our body's electrical flow. That is what the brain does. There is no confusion around that. So how does it coordinate it? There would be, let's say, a historical evolution of how light is being organized. Like the brain organizes light, electricity, and magnetism, but it doesn't just organize it in a random way. There is some kind of historical system or systematicity in which light is organized. And because the human has been on Earth for a long time, a lot of this entrainment has something to do as well with the Earth. The human being has been on the Earth for a long time, and the brain was developed along with the heart and our lungs and the rest of our body in order to sustain life on Earth. We wanted to thrive and survive on Earth. along with other organisms that also had brains, breaths, and brains, hearts, and breathing processes. So going back to that question, who is organizing? Something is organizing. We can at least study the part of the body that's organizing a lot of these functions, and it's called the autonomic nervous system. We cannot study this enough. Like what we are tapping into in this spontaneous awakening process in the body and in spirit, in the mind, is the autonomic nervous system. When you hear the word autonomic, what this is also saying is automatic. Like somehow the body knows what to do. It organizes your billions of neurons, your trillions of cells, the quadrillions of connections between these cells and neurons, all your organs, your enzymes, your hormones, your neurotransmitters. Now, there are three aspects or three elements of the autonomic nervous system. We normally just take up two of them, the sympathetic. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard these concepts and might have been studying these in other courses. The inner dance, though, has some unique possible understandings of both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic would study more like fear, anxiety, excitement, everything to do with stimulatory functions, and the parasympathetic would study more of trust, digest, and what could be called rest. Okay, these two systems are beautiful. They're unique. They're powerful. They organize our complexities based on many things, but most likely the main organizing set of parameters that defines how we coordinate what's ascending and descending would be the clockworks. Like, what time is it? It's depending on where you are in the world, sometimes the like light and dark are shorter or longer than each other. So we're looking at clock not just in terms of the day, that's not just the day, but also the month, because the moon moves according to the month, and also the year. So having lived on Earth for a long time and being exposed to light and dark, we actually program from an evolutionary perspective the human. And the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system is a product of this dynamic between light and dark. To just rush into this, because we don't have that much time, what inner dance observes is okay, so there's something that goes up and down. Is it really, really that simple? Is it really simple as when the sun is up, our energies go up, and then when the sun is down, the moon is up, does our energy start to rest or go to sleep? It's a little bit more complex than that, because there is an actual wave pattern that the human body undergoes in the spiritual process and the day, the month, and the year. And this is called the circadian rhythms. The circadian rhythms basically describe the clockwork or the movement of energies in the human and animals and plants over the course of 24 hours, circa diem, about a day, circa diem. So this happens either on a chemical basis. This happens in this particular study within brainwave activity. So we can call this delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. And this horizontal axis may be understood as the concept of time. So within a particular duration of time, there is a movement from let's say the lowest, the lowest brain wave, and goes up to the highest brain wave. So what I drew here is one basic sleep stage. There are as many as 5 or 6 stages of sleep when you go to sleep, maybe for 7 hours or 8 hours per night. And it's basically the journey into what you call REM state or REM sleep. So there are stages of non-REM 1, non-REM 2, and non-REM 3 that brings people into the dream that is actually very, very similar to the stages of awakening, the stages of transformation. So what we study here is when people go into the dream, there is what you might call a simultaneous co-activation of both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. There's a simultaneous co-activation. And because we've been studying this for a long time now, for almost 2 decades, we've discovered many metaphorical or analogous relationships that every time there is that simultaneous co-activation between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, certain things happen in what we call the birthing process, or the process of death, where there is this life review that happens in the near-death experience. So there's dream, and then there is the spiritual awakening, awakening. And then in the psychedelic phenomenon, when people take psychedelics, there's something very, very similar that takes place in terms of the co-activation of the sympathetic and parasympathetic. So the question is, what happens when we activate this and activate this both at the same time? Something happens to what is called time perception. I feel time is the biggest question in both science and philosophy. Like, what is time? And when you change certain conditions related to our experience and our perception, we actually can expand our experience of time. Like, let's say if people lay down for like an hour, an hour can extend, so that a lot of people, what they say is, I experienced my whole life, or I went back to the womb of my mother, or I went back to the earth, or I went into, let's say, the black hole. Okay, I went back to the universe. How could you do that in 1 hour? You know, just to ride a spaceship to go to a black hole, it would take years to reach like a black hole. How can you experience a whole life in an hour? And so when you study all these, it's the same thing. When you were born, why do you not remember your birthing moment? It's because perception and dimensionality wasn't the same back then. But we cannot interview babies because they cannot speak yet. So we can only rely on the remembrances people are having when we recollect the birthing moment. But when you think of the dream life review, spiritual awakening, psychedelics, it's very, very similar. Like, time expands in all of those situations. And the one common ingredient is that the sympathetic and the parasympathetic are turned on. They are co-activated simultaneously in one same moment. Yeah, let's just erase that one as well. Maybe even that one. Okay, so if we were interested in the autonomic nervous system in that way, if we are interested in the autonomic nervous system and those two aspects that I said, the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and that we do understand, okay, this, oh, it's that, sometimes does that, it has a life of its own. Then you can construct a science out of this. You can actually explain the mechanism to a school principal, to a doctor, to a clinical psychologist, to the owner of a company, to the president of, let's say, or the head of the European Union. This is how we're able to talk to politicians and school principals and government officials now. It's because we have this understanding, which we can bring more and more into explanation. And there is interest because there are a host of effects, like healing can occur when there is that simultaneous co-activation. You can actually bring about certain levels of intelligence when you do that simultaneous co-activation. Transformation would be the most obvious, like a process of change. There must be other outcomes that we configure. So with that, if we agree that this is useful, that we have those outcomes that we are now experiencing, how can we go deeper into the structure? So what I want to offer you, so that I feel we need something focused for today, and also structured, I want to talk about the chemistries of change. Like a literal understanding of the chemicals that brings about change. So I'm going to maybe one way to do this is to create a grid. Let's say, let's create a matrix. And let's put the sympathetic nervous system here. Just to remind people, in case you forgot, sympathetic nervous system deals with fear responses. The stress, let's call it the stress response mechanism in the body, which is basically the fear state. It could also be relatable to excitement. And then here would be the BSNS. Let's just call it resting and trusting. So let's define then the chemicals that we can ascribe to these two sections here, because they might be able to illuminate us. The first step in a spiritual process would be here. In inner dance, there are 12 stages in the awakening process. The first is to open the space, which means to bring about a sense of trust. To open the space. If people aren't trusting, there will be no magic, there will be no healing, there will be no communication, there will be no connection. What happens in the rising of energy when you reach certain peak points, this is called the threshold, for example. There are different peak points. One of the most powerful tools in the process has to do with trigger mechanisms. The triggers are designed to awaken that which is sleeping. Let's say to awaken that which is sleeping. It can also allow for confrontation, that which is not being looked at. Let's say there are things being avoided and being hidden. We are learning the basic trigger mechanisms that can allow for the healing of what's called cognitive dissonance, the thing about the human mind that lies, that hides truths, because we're not able to look at it. So when we trigger through a process of stimulation, anything that excites and stimulates certain elements in the body, whether it be neurons, whether it be groups of cell bodies, whether it be nerve tracts, that's what a trigger mechanism is. So I think maybe to ground this a little bit, let's look at the system in a way that might be practical for you. Like initially, let's look at, let me see. No, that's too complex. Let's look at here. So when people go through, let's say, an experience or a coursework into like a Kundalini process, you become familiar with like movements that are taking place around the world that look like this. Now, what you're looking at is not a Kundalini rising set of photos. This is a photo on epilepsy. And there are maybe different phases in epilepsy. This one is particularly called the tonic phase. What I want to bring attention to here is the spine. So when we go back to the, before that, let's look at the autonomic nervous system initially through a basic mapping of fear and trust. This is like an old rendition, so there are notes here already. Basically, what I want to point out is in the rest and trust section of the autonomic nervous system, the extensions or the outflows happen at the cranium and the sacrum, at the top of the spine and at the bottom of the spine. The sympathetic, remembering that this is about fear and activation and excitement. The extensions or the outflows are here in the middle of the spine. So let's look at that in a more specific way. Okay, let's make this a bit bigger. This is the cranium. It would be cranium 3, 5, 7, 9, 10, especially cranium 10, which would be the vagus nerve. I think about 80% of the extensions and the outflows of the parasympathetic actually extends out of the vagus nerve. And then this would be the sacrum. So to open the space, to allow people to trust, there's a reason why we would hold the upper region and the lower region. This doesn't need to be literal. Just let's say extending the arm, especially the right arm. We extend the right arm and this is activated. Trust and openness arrives. People feel safe. Why the right arm? Because the right arm is an extension of the left hemisphere of the brain, where language and sequential thinking process is, it's where it is stored. So when you extend the right arm, the left brain, which is that part of us that's always worrying, it actually opens up. So there are certain techniques that you can use. Other techniques would simply be asking people to close their eyes or lay down. Already there are neurotransmitters and hormones that are spreading. So for now, I just want to point out that fear starts from here, from T1, all the way to here, L2. This is called the thoracolumbar region. The thoracic region extends from here, and then the lumbar region starts here. But if you want to activate people, well, there's a reason why certain people are held or touched in certain parts of the body. Like, why do we go to the chest or the abdomen? Why do we go to the, like, behind the head? Why do we open, let's say, the hip region? It's actually because of these extensions. It's because of these extensions. This is how we might visually, in a simple way, understand what a simultaneous co-activation is. Now, go back to my screen. So you can try to take this literally, and there's only so much value in trying to actually touch the spine or that part of the body. The body is a lot more complex than this. The body uses many mechanisms, most importantly, what might be called signaling. mechanisms. So for one, let's say taking in the sensory modes. So let's say the things that you see, the things that you hear, the things that you feel, and this could relate to everything from touch, pressure, pain, pleasure. There's a lot more that the tactile sense can feel. So anything that activates the signaling mechanism, so especially sound, right? The things that you hear will affect all these brain elements that we speak about. So for one, the heart will get affected. And the heart is very, very sensitive to sound. So changes in rhythm will, changes in rhythm will create changes in the heartbeat, which is measurable by beats per minute. And there's a certain range of rhythm or rhythmicity that is familiar to the body. This is called the rate of salience. And this might be from anything between 40 beats per minute to about, let's say, 160. Some people might say 180, might be higher beats per minute. And these have correspondences to the actual rhythms of the heart. So you want to study different rhythms. Italy has a lot to do with the defining of rhythm, because classical music very much is ascribed to have begun in this part of the world, and now music has shifted into what we hear now in the radio. So signaling mechanisms, the tools that we use enter the autonomic nervous system's field, and there would be these signaling mechanisms. So I want to study that just to give you some tools that you can use in the process. So understanding that if this is number one, right? So the things that you do that bring about trust would send out signaling mechanisms. So what are the signaling mechanisms of the body? In terms of the chemicals, chemicals are important because they have a way of activating electric and magnetic forces in the body. Chemicals actually can help in coordinating the firing patterns, the spike trains, the firing of action potentials.
Sorry, just a second.
Yeah.
We see the slide with the spine and the nervous and para.
Ah, okay. So let me try to repeat it. Yeah. Is it? Can you see it now? No. Okay. I think not. Let me try to. This sometimes happens. So what I need to do is go back to this. And wait, no, not. Okay. Yeah. Does it work? No.
Now it works. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Chemicals act as signals for light in a way that neurons firing are what are called action potentials. They rely on some of these signaling mechanisms. So if you know how to coordinate these signaling mechanisms, you can influence a brainwave being a spike train of action potentials, like a lot of firing patterns. So when people, for example, like to use the word activation, not just the activation of Kundalini, what are you actually activating? If you're activating light in the body is lit up by action potentials that lead to firing patterns that then leads to an actual brainwave. Isn't that interesting? So a lot of people are studying brainwaves from delta to gamma, all the way to high oscillating frequencies. But when you look at it from a very, very minute level, and when you study, for example, the Kundalini activation, there is a very thin line between the rising of Kundalini and the surge of epilepsy. An epileptic seizure because epilepsy is described to be a synchronization of desynchronized brain regions. And when you light up the brain regions, an epilepsy process in a spiritual format actually starts to happen. In ancient societies, like in Greece, epilepsy was called a sacred disease. So when people have seizures in places like ancient India, they didn't call that epilepsy. They called that like a spiritual awakening process. But because we are dealing with this from an east-west, north-south process, we're looking at the scientific foundation for how this comes about. So going back to trust, what then would be the chemical of trust? A lot of people might think of, let's say, serotonin or dopamine. The actual chemical for trust is basically oxytocin. People think that oxytocin is just the love hormone, but oxytocin is actually a trust hormone as well. So when you are in a space of trust, when there is a trust, especially for other people, for situations in the external world, even like trusting the universe, we actually produce more and send out more oxytocin. So when you get people to enter the room, and then let's say people are relaxing, you play a certain kind of music, and when you start to begin the process, oxytocin levels actually shoot up. What could be interesting about this is when people go really deep in the process, and when the body starts to bend in very, very strange ways that looks like the birthing process. Oxytocin is that which needs to be released during labor, during the stages of birthing, that allows for what's called contractions and expansions. So it's very interesting that people look like they're giving birth sometimes when the spine is bending in this way. It's the same motion. So for that reason, we have been working with pregnant women for many, many years. And don't ever let anyone tell you that you cannot offer this work to pregnant women. The pregnant women actually have some of the most important life-changing experiences. And people say it's dangerous and so on. So it's because if you don't know what you're doing, you would think it's dangerous. Anyhow, I'm not really here to talk about that at length. I'm here to talk about it is possible to bring about a self-birth in the process that we do. So let's put that here. Oxytocin is something we can implicate initially. Okay, another chemical of transformation, chemistry of change would be melatonin. Pretty sure a lot of you know what melatonin is. Now, melatonin is responsible for the sleep-wake cycle. So there's something about our eyes that's very, very sensitive to light. And when there is an absence to light, let's say when the eyes are closed, when we close our eyes, right, what happens is melatonin levels go up. Okay, we send out signals from the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus to what's called the pineal gland, what many people call the third eye. And the central role, or the main role of the pineal gland, is to send out melatonin. Melatonin brings us into the dream state. So basically, in the work that we do, if you ask people to lay down, simply just asking them to lay down, they already go off into another space. And melatonin is hugely responsible for this. The dream isn't really just the dream images that you see. The dream is actually about brainwave activity. The dream is about simultaneous co-activation where is that thing that we drew? Did we erase it? Yeah, we did. No, here. The dream is the simultaneous co-activation of slow and fast. Like there's delta energy emanating, and then there's very high gamma frequencies as well, and a lot of everything in between. One of them, whoops, okay. All right. So let's implicate melatonin here. Melatonin. Okay. So here, maybe you've sent out these signaling mechanisms in stage number 1, when people are opening and trusting this space. So once you've done that, now you are interested in the trigger mechanisms. The trigger mechanisms bring about the activation. It's what allows energy to rise up slowly, very, very slowly. So you need to, let's say, conduct certain musics that would stimulate. What would be the stimulating elements, right? In the sensory modes, certain musics, maybe you said certain things. So let's say it's the spoken word. And spoken words actually also hold images inside, because a word in structuralism is actually a sound image. A word stores the images within the sound. And then when we translated that into the written word, we actually reverse that process. So when you hold words that hold certain contexts, especially contexts that confront, that activate, that help people to face their fears, and then there's certain musics that do the same, you create these trigger mechanisms. What we're interested in, what would rise up when we trigger people based on the chemistries of change. Let's generalize them. There would be epinephrine. Most people know this by the word adrenaline. There would be norepinephrine. And then there would also be cortisol. Cortisol is known as the stress hormone. Now, what do these do? They conduct many different functions autonomically within the ANS. They already coordinate so many things related to human activity. But one basic thing that they do in common is they raise the heart rate. The heart rate. And when you elevate the heart rate, the whole body responds in many ways. Historically, when we raise the heart rate, it's usually when we were in stress, but it's also when we need to focus. So let's say you need to go to work. One easy way to elevate the heart rate, and Italians love this like so much, they like to drink coffee. You want to elevate heart rate, you drink a lot of coffee. You have an espresso. But this is not the only way. If you wanted people to confront their fear, we would use music, because music is a very, very effective way to raise the heart levels. So let's write these here. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol. Okay, so I'm just going to start listing out like other neurotransmitters and hormones. Neurotransmitters are the chemicals that the brain uses as signaling mechanisms. Hormones are that which the endocrine systems throughout the body uses as signaling mechanisms. Here you might have acetylcholine, and then you might have something serotonin. And most importantly, you would have here what's called GABA. GABA is the most numerous inhibitory neurotransmitter in the body. And this is something we're studying more and more in the spiritual process, because it is responsible for consolidating short-term memories into long-term memories. They're also responsible for the learning process. So if we want to make sure that the energy process does not remove too much memories and patterns in the mind as people learn to forgive, let go, and become new human beings, intelligence and genius will be coordinated by GABA alongside its partner, which is the most numerous excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain. It's called glutamate. So then we would also think about or talk about dopamine. Yeah, I would say these are the major ones. Let's just list down 10. I could just keep going on. There's a lot of other elements to do with endocrine system, with the thyroid, the thymus. Most commonly, like when you look at this, when you look at the hormones here, the hormones, there's 3 hormones here. There's epinephrine. This is a hormone. Let's just put H. This is a hormone. This is a hormone. This is hormone. They're probably the most influential hormones to do with the sympathetic nervous system and the work that we do. This is a neurotransmitter. This is a neurotransmitter. Now, when you study this, these hormones, they all come from the same gland or glandular region. They all come from the, it's inbuilt into the name, like adrenaline or norepinephrine is comes from the adrenal gland, the adrenal cortex. And if you know where that is situated in the body, if let's say we think about that from a chakra perspective, the adrenaline system would be in the yellow, it would be in the yellow chakra, as opposed to, let's say, the other endocrine systems, the gonads, which should be the reproductive systems, the testes and the uterus, ovaries, and then you would have the thymus here. You would have the thyroid, and then you would have, let's say, the pineal gland, and you would have the pituitary. But the pituitary actually has a guiding force, which is more influential. It's called the hypothalamus. And then you would have maybe the pancreas would be relatable to the red chakra to do with digestion. So you can see there's this whole color-based system, chakra-based system that is related to these chemicals of change or transformation. Like here we implicated melatonin. So there's something about the indigo chakra that either contrasts or complements these 3 chemicals that I spoke about. Well, let's just call them the adrenergic chemicals plus cortisol. Adrenergic chemicals are the it's what comes from the adrenaline system. Cortisol. Sorry, I forgot what I was writing as I was writing it because I was speaking. So the adrenal system, because it's in the yellow chakra, could be relatable to, we implicated fear, but when we think of the yellow chakra, what we normally think about are power elements, right? It's a power of agency, power of, yeah, like being able to do it. That's what agency means. Like I have the power. I feel empowered. So when the yellow chakra is blocked, then what we have are power issues, either to do with disempowerment or even addictions to power, which might lead to ego tendencies in human, which we are seeing very much often, even in the spiritual process, especially in the type of work that we do. When it's too much power structured, there are imbalances where the pineal gland and pituitary are more responsible for wisdom. So when we lose touch with the indigo, the yellow would take over. It just keeps disappearing. So yeah, this is for me like maybe an interesting introduction for you for long-term study, that there are these many stages in the awakening. Could be number 3, 4, be 5 would be here, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 is very chaotic. Number 10, 11, 12. I don't have time to outline all these stages. There's material out there. You can just maybe try to find them. One of the more interesting things to study here always is this one right here. Oops. This is number 5. Number 5 is in the stages of awakening. This is called the disintegration process, and this is followed by the awakening. The awakening would be number 6 right here. Disintegration in the circadian rhythms is synonymous with what's called non-REM 3 stage. And this could be more easily understood as slow wave sleep. It's the part of the sleep stage where we experience the most delta waves. And when we experience that, it's very deep. I don't know if you ever woke up and you could not move. That's you waking up and you were in the N3 stage. Now, when you construct a playlist, which would require, let's say, a library system where you can draw out certain things. Like a lot of people, they're using Spotify. Other people, they use the Noise app. Some people use digital audio workstations. That's what I use. Other people use synthesizers. I use that as well, that have different frequency possibilities. We can bring people here, but you can use songs. Choose a song that would bring people into a very low state. In the stages of awakening, there are 4 delta states. Number 1, 5. Number 10 is called the dark night of the soul. And then number 12 is called the reintegration process. It's like we end the process in a very, very deep space, which is similar to how we open the space. It's like delta exists here, delta exists here, but in the in-between be number 5 and number 10. So especially with the slow wave sleep, which is the stage that allows us to go into, if you remember, like the REM state. The REM state being the simultaneous co-activation of the slow and the fast, okay? Which brings about this expansion of time perception. Because our topic is the what do you call this? The chemistries of change. Then let's get interested in the neurotransmitter that brings that about the most. It's called GABA. GABA is responsible for this almost death-like experience where we disappear. Okay, so more and more people are experiencing in the playlists of the work that we do. It's like I don't know where I went. I cannot explain it. Or I went to the universe. I went to the cosmos. I went into the black hole. I went into the black hole. Or Kala in Hindu is synonymous with black time. Okay, or I went back to the womb of my mother. That there is an actual frequency, a set of frequencies in the sleep stage and in the spiritual process, in the playlist, where that level of process takes place, and I would call that just a different dimension. It's a different dimensionality of time and space. It doesn't need to be complex, because we are shifting from one dimension to the next. And if you were to study, especially the use of music when you do study the use of music, music holds different dimensions. So we're not really just interested in music production. It's not really about like looking or creating the right music, even though that is important because we understand music does affect the body now. What makes production important would be its counterpart. It's actually reception. Okay. A way of receiving the music. So let's take this out. What if we didn't call it music? What if the music was in fact organized vibrations, which would contain even like bouts of silence, of like certain gaps, certain things that don't even sound like music, might be noise. It's organized vibrations, organized frequencies, organized amplitudes, all of which exist in the body to begin with. So what we are learning is how would these vibrations be received that would mimic the vibrations that are already there in the first place. That kind of mimicry brings about a field resonance within the body that resonates with that which is outside the body. So when we know how to bring people into these dimensions, through these dimensions, you know, a lot of people think that spiritual awakening is going out of the mind. But really, I mean, the truth is we're actually learning to go into the mind. So there's a reason why we're using music that's I find really, really interesting indeed. When you study this word, I was looking at this word. I wanted to see what's in this word, because people are going into the third, the fourth, the fifth dimension. Want to understand the word dimension. I mean, there are definitions of this word in science related to, you know, like length, width, areas in space. So I want to see what this word actually means. The history of the human was to try to eradicate this. And now we just have that. But to bring that back, when you study the brain of a baby, say this is a baby. I'm such a bad artist. I'm so sorry. I'm not my daughter. When you study the brain of a baby, the baby is at the last week of gestation. This word happens to be there. In the last week in the womb, let's say, especially generally in the last trimester, the baby would have been sleeping about 90 to, let's say, 95% of the time. And during that time, the baby is also about 90 to 95% in the REM state. Understanding it's in the REM state where healing, transformation, you know, the total human being lives in the REM state. When you're dreaming, you are more whole. So right now, this is us, this is you. I'll be honest, maybe this is me too in many ways. Right now we are sleeping 1/3 of the day, 30% of the day. How many hours is that? And we're only going into REM state about 15% of the time. So there's a reason why we are using very, very small sections of the brain. The brain capacity is actually very small now. It's maybe higher than before in certain aspects of looking at it. Maybe at the most it's 10%, but in many ways we're using less of our brains. And I'm speaking about, yeah, I don't want to generalize, but we have less in brain capacity, whereas maybe in the brain of a child, the brain is born with 100 billion neurons. And right now, most adults have as little as 50 billion neurons. It is true that the human has more synaptic connections, but a lot of those synaptic connections are actually responsible for trauma because we hold patterns through synapses, whilst in the brain of a baby, the synapses aren't there yet. So the brain of a baby is potent. There is pure potentiality. So there's a reason why babies, when listening to white noise or general noise, could be gray noise, you know, even like traffic outside, the baby falls asleep, because when you do study what is happening in the womb, it was not quiet. It was not quiet. It was very, very noisy. And that noise hadn't yet gone into dualistic systems of interpretation where there are the sensitivities. And there are two types of psychologies to study that would probably bring more context to the work that we do. And I mean, you could study the you know, normal psychology that understands the nature of the human mind at work. But were you to study the psychology that would interrelate to the work that we do, it would begin with a developmental psychology, which is an understanding of the brain of a fetus or a baby that becomes an adult. And it would also be related to evolutionary psychology, which would be, how did we construct the brain out of maybe millions of years of evolution, or hundreds of thousands, or, you know, tens of thousands, depending on how you describe the human, whether it be from the Australopithecus all the way to Homo erectus or Homo habilis. Why that psychology? It's because we have learned so far that through the simultaneous co-activation, what we're basically doing is we're firing up the brain, understanding that we can activate the brain's electricity and magnetism. When we think of the brain, what we see is the gray matter, which are distinctly divided into the brain lobes. And we study these lobes. In the frontal lobe, a lot of the physical movements are mapped out. So when the body is moving, which tends to happen in a lot of the workshops people are having, we're firing at the frontal lobe. So for example, when the eyes are moving very fast in REM state, a lot of the activations are happening in the orbitofrontal and the frontal eyelids, cortices. When people are experiencing a lot of feelings and sensations, you know, like ants crawling in the skin, or sometimes you feel like the room is becoming bigger, your body became really, really big. That's the parietal lobe activation. When you see visions, colors, shapes, that's the occipital lobe. And when you experience emotions and sounds, when you smell things in your journey, that's an activation in the temporal lobe region. But that's really just the new brain. A lot of the activations are happening it's in the old brain. And this is called the basal ganglia, along with maybe parts of the diencephalon. We activate this, and these are very, very powerful parts of the brain. They're instinctual, they're animal sections of the brain, especially what's called the reptilian brain. They are responsible for emotions, memory, and body movements as well, autonomic nervous system functions. So when you ask people to lay down and you expose them to sound, what you activate are also the pathways of electricity. So these are pathways of electricity. This is the pathways, the highway systems for light. And like this one is one of the most major activation centers. But when you study the brain, what we realize is, when you look at it, let's say closely, wait, how do you make this bigger? What we discover is we don't have one brain, right? There's space, like between the brain, there's pure space. It's incredible to just consider that. It's like, wow, we have contralateralized brains, so that the left brain, for most people, right-handed people are different. than left-handed people. So if you're, let's say, I didn't mean to light that up. If you are right, don't need to, I didn't need to light that up. When you're right-handed, that means your language center is in the left brain. So that means you contralateralize, music would exist in the right brain for you. And for left-handed people, it would be the opposite. Your language centers would be in your right brain. So what happens when you start to send out using music and different tools like proprioception, kinesthesia, semanticity through the use of words, even just positioning the body in certain ways and then touching the body, tactician is what it's called. You basically would send out electricity through these tracks. So remember that the brain was contralateralized and bilateral, meaning they're separate. When you send out electricity through pathways, nerve tracks like the corpus callosum, then you connect both hemispheres of the brain, therefore making ipsilateral what is contralateralized. So you might know or be one yourself of people who are they can use both left and right. They're bidextrous people. One of the gifts of the work that we do is we actually bring about a cohabitation of music and language in both sections of the brain. But before that happens, there are certain events. So for example, when light language happens in people, that means that because we're lighting up the nerve tracts, then we actually start to affect the language regions of the brain. This is called the Broca's area, and it's responsible for language production. Over here in the, I think this is the superior temporal gyrus, you have the Wernicke's area, which is responsible for language comprehension. So when you light up Broca's area with a lot of light and electricity, people either go into light language or they momentarily lose the capacity to speak. They find it hard to talk again after very, very deep processes. Over here, if you light this up, the effect of it would be you would hear people speaking, but you would not understand the words that they're speaking. So for example, we had a Spanish woman here named Christina, and someone was asking her, technically, specifically my wife was asking her, Christina, do you want some eggs for breakfast? And she had been going through some deep processes, and she was just looking at Italy, my wife. She said egg. She said egg, egg, egg. I don't understand what egg means. So it's actually possible to release ourselves of the bondages and the limitations that language holds that sustains meaning making and signification processes in the human. That is what light does. And if we were to look at structural philosophy and psychology, through especially like Jacques Lacan, who then continued the work of Freud, improved upon it by bringing structure to it. Language structures the unconscious, which may as well be the conscious. The unconscious is, according to Freud, that part of the iceberg. Let's say this is the sea, the ocean. This is the unconscious to Freud.
Sorry, Pai, we still see the brain.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I need to do that same thing again. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. What did I write before? No, I didn't write anything before that. So language structures the unconscious. This is structuralism because psychology met linguistics here. We understand that language isn't just the words that we use. Language is the system that scaffolds consciousness itself. So I want to end the talk with this, that if you were given the power, the chance to bring about transformation in people or change, understanding that language brings about the blueprint or the architecture of how we see things. If you don't understand the connections here yet, like in developmental psychology, when language acquisition takes place, when children acquire words and words start to create placeholders for memory, for concepts, for sensations, then we create that structure, and then we become conscious through personification, through identity, right? So when we lose language, in many ways we go back to the baby state. So you remember the drawing that I made here. When we go back into the language, the universal language, the light language of babies, we basically go into the REM state. And when we go into the REM state, we're not bound by trauma. We're not bound by the past, the autonomic past that controls our bodies and makes us think the way we do, behave the way we do, respond in fear. Let's say past fear, which is what trauma holds or hides. When we have the power to do that, that's really what light brings. You bring about light language, light. When light structures the unconscious, you know, when your eye is single, your whole body will be filled with light. When you simultaneously co-activate light and darkness, we transform and we bring about like oneness or oneness or integration. And in so doing, we create the new earth. And I'm not sure if it's possible to create the new earth without a new brain. And because the brain is embodied, we need a new body to contain the new human that would midwife the new earth, which isn't just about humans. So I will close here. I think I've been speaking for an hour and a half. I want to leave some space for questions because we're together now. Isn't it amazing? Like you're all the way there and I'm here. Anything that is evoked, provoked, yeah, let's let Sigfrid hold a Q&A now. Just a dialogue between us.
Thank you, Pai, for all this condensed knowledge, and we promised that they would get the video, and then when we upload it to our YouTube channel, they can have the subtitles in Italian. So not everybody said is able to follow everything, but still it was important. We believe that lots come across in one way or the other. Apriamo adesso la possibilità per fare domande che vi sono sorte durante l'ascolto, la percezione, e non è importante che abbiate capito tutte le parole, avrete la possibilità di riascoltarlo e vederlo in italiano con i sottotitoli. Però se ci sono impulsi di qualsiasi tipo. Paola?
No, sto ancora elaborando perché è tantissimo, è molto interessante. Cioè, potremmo andare avanti delle ore, un anno.
They say it's been so intense, it's still like digesting and trying to incorporate all the information. Yeah, we told them that you are having this training of 1 year, like 3 times 3 months, for everybody who feels the calling of knowing more, deepening more. There's study groups that it's a global group, and there's local groups in different languages. Ci sono gruppi anche in spagnolo, in inglese, in tedesco, e anche uno coordinato is there an Italian local group by now?
No,
Hi.
you would have to start one if there's going to be one.
Mhm. Ok, so we might. Non c'è ancora un gruppo italiano che è formato con questo. Cioè ci sono, il training consiste in incontri online con Pai di questo tipo, però sono 3 ore, 3 ore, 3 ore, quindi è abbastanza intenso, e ogni 2 settimane. E in mezzo c'è poi l'internet suo, cioè che ha tutti, tutti i conoscimenti, tutte le informazioni, e ci sono gruppi che si formano di studio e poi si combatte. Insomma. Ecco, questo è un po' il processo che lui propone per chi vuole andare in profondità.
Io volevo fare una domanda.
Sì, vieni qua, presentati un attimo, cioè venite
Io
qua.
parlo italiano.
Beh, io traduco.
I can hear him really well. I can hear everyone really well, but it's good. Yeah, take center stage.
Ciao, sono Luca
I'm Luca, I'm just translating.
e volevo chiedere l'elemento fondamentale per l'attivazione e quindi la stimolazione
I just want to clarify for myself the fundamental element for the so-called activation
è il suono.
is the sound.
The sound activates the brain.
Il sound attiva il cervello.
So
Attraverso
So even without the sound, it can be activated if the other conditions are there. Like the body has many signaling mechanisms, especially through the senses. So if the sympathetic and the parasympathetic are activated at the same time, even just asking someone to lay down already activates certain frequencies and chemicals. So when there is a trigger, there's an activation when something is trusting and relaxed. The mixture would be there, like what goes up and what goes down. Whenever that happens in a very intense way, it is going to take place. So even, let's say, a person has been experiencing this, they may not need the sound later on at all.
Ok, dice che il corpo ha tanti sistemi, diciamo, nervosi che influiscono sul sistema simpatico e parasimpatico. Quindi anche già quando invitiamo qualcuno a sdraiarsi, a chiudere gli occhi, già induce certi processi chimici che mette in atto delle cose. Il suono è un'altra cosa in più, cioè ci sono tanti elementi che confluiscono.
Però per quanto io possa aver capito, cioè la gestione e la capacità di gestire le variazioni del suono agiscono sul sistema nervoso collegato al sistema endocrino, quindi lavorano a livello ormonale, trasformando a livello ormonale nel corpo e nella mente, diciamo, l'utente,
Esatto.
il paziente.
So from what I understood is like being able to manage and influencing the sound, which has an impact on the autonomic nervous system and an endocrine system, producing hormones is like the chain of complex mechanism happening in the body in the people who are laying down in the sessions.
E qui chiudo, volevo fare la domanda.
And here I close, I just want to have one question.
Quindi nella gestione, cioè la cosa, per quanto possa aver capito io, la cosa importante e fondamentale è, nel momento in cui noi facciamo l'attivazione, imparare a gestire la musica, il suono, più idoneo a un certo tipo di attivazione.
Sì, per quello c'è la curva della musica.
Dove c'è la curva della musica?
Sì. So one of the fundamental elements is really to manage like the format of the music, the playlist, in order to induce the desired, let's say, waves or the desired changes during the session.
Quindi è il suono. c'è l'elemento, cioè la gestione dell'udente attraverso il suono.
E il tocco e tutto questo. Però il suono è molto importante.
Yes, I want to add to that we are
Voglio
finding out
aggiungere qualcosa?
more and more how to bring balance or homeostasis to the whole human, and the music can bring about a very, very powerful balance. But sometimes we need to imbalance the old structures which have fear and limitations there, and we achieve a bigger balance or bigger homeostasis. So there will be new music to come to the human. It might seem strange music, but because the brain is changing, the music in the world will also be changing.
Una cosa che dice, cioè l'importante è portare equilibrio, un balance nell'essere umano, cioè è importante l'omeostasi, però per fare questo si deve anche contrastare con vecchie cose, vecchi programmi, quindi come decomporre per poi riportare un equilibrio.
Quindi,
e la musica cambierà molto?
Quindi un esempio, nella musica classica potrebbero essere le 4 stagioni di Vivaldi. Cioè l'alternarsi.
He asks, for example, is there kind of a correlation like with the 4 seasons of Vivaldi? Is there also an alternation of different modalities in the 4 seasons?
I'm not familiar with Vivaldi. I will make sure I listen to him this week.
No, non conosce bene Vivaldi, però ovviamente nella musica classica ci sono anche.
But many of these classical masters, they knew something transcendent and what is beyond the normal music, for sure.
Tanti maestri classici conoscevano, avevano conoscenza del potere della musica per portare una trascendenza.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Bianca. So I have some questions. It's a process that came now in this moment while you were talking. It's a little bit confused because it just came up, so I'm not sure that I'm going to formulate it in a correct way. But it's about the state of awareness correlated with the feeling and the intuition and the perception of the layers of the intuition. So there is a deconstruction pattern. For example, in this moment, I feel the pencil. I feel through touching. This is a density, okay? If I have to go inside, I can feel my emotion. For example, I'm feeling that I'm triggering my insecurity by being here and talking to you. And I can feel inside my body how this trigger is manifesting. Like, for example, with the uncertainty in the voice, the vibration, I can feel my hands are sweating. I can feel my heart beating, like you said, when the trigger is done. I can feel in the stomach, like something is going inside. And this is a state of awareness because I know what's happening. And in the same way, I feel there is an observer, a witness that sees what I'm doing in this moment, even if the emotion is coming. And then there is another feeling or layer of perception that is, oh, everything of this is happening in order to go through an evolution. You are seeing the information of the truthful of the emotion that is carrying in this situation. And this is a state of awareness, fully aware. But I can go more deeper in the layer of the awareness. It's like going deeper, deeper, and deeper. What is the energy at the base that is moving this emotion and this awareness? So it's like there are different layers of perception, the material, but even the energy of the awareness. And it's the same thing that happened through activation and other processes. I can deconstruct from the density of the body, of the organs, of the blood, through the density and lighter of the emotion, the feeling, the perception, the awareness, and it's very subtle and very deep. And this is a deconstruction process. And it's going backwards. It's like you explained before what happened in backwards of this is the light, this is the materialization of the light. And you explained the backwards process to go here. But why the light decides to materialize for us to be perceived?
Wow. Thank you. I love it. Thank you so much, because this goes into the heart of this is so good. Let's go back to the screen. It's a beautiful question because it arrives at something that's not always easy to speak about. So there's something in the experience that people have been talking about through observation again and again. And you are putting it in such a sophisticated way. So let's look at the elements that you have spoken, like emotion. You spoke about the state of awareness. And you also pointed out something to do with something is going backwards, a return. Like one sacred symbol in Egypt is it's the serpent eating its own tail. It's called palingenesis, or the Ouroboros, which is the end is the beginning, and the beginning is the end. So in the experience, the spiritual experience, in the inner dance process, we have an understanding now of what trust is. What is trust? Because trust is an emotion, but it's a certain kind of emotion. And actually what is interesting is when I've looked at the neurology that has been studied by the Italian neurology. Italian neurology actually comes close to Italian brain science. There are several brain scientists in Italy that have been studying and revealing something to do with what you're saying. State of awareness, emotion, backwards. There's something in a state of awareness that goes backwards, and it actually has a name. And the name of it is, it's this. It's retrocausality. Now, retrocausality describes another strange experience of the universe. And the part of the universe where we're actually experiencing this is the black hole. No, there's no W. It's the black hole. In the black hole, time goes backwards. And when you experience the time going backwards, what happens is normally in a universe where time goes forwards, time cause leads to effect. So let's say when something happens, then there's going to be an outcome. But in a retrocausal universe, it's very strange. The effect precedes the cause. So when you meet people who are trusting, and this is, I think, something we're learning to trust. It's like, I don't know why I need to go to Sandra and Siegfried. I don't know why I need to touch this person in that part of the body. I don't know why I need to speak out now, to find my own voice and be in this Zoom call and speak to Pi. Trust is like, I don't know why, but there's a part of me that already knows. And what we're realizing is emotion is in fact responsible for knowing ahead what has not happened yet, but has actually already happened. So in a way, there's something in the body that knows a lot more than the mind. And sometimes we experience this through emotion. And the work of the Italian scientist, Antonio Damasio, he's way ahead than most other neurologists in understanding the importance of the body, that should inform the mind, but we're not listening to the body, and we now ask what is in the body. The body is somehow embodying a universe. So something that inverts in the spiritual process when we go into that state of awareness that you so beautifully describe. This is, let's say, time, and this is space. So when we live in time, things happen one moment at a time. It's like when you're using language, it's one word at a time. And so this is like linear time. So when we go into another dimension or state of awareness, what happens is when we go outside of causation or causality, what we realize is we can actually access space. A lot of people, they perceive outer space. But what if what we are looking at is actually inner space? What if the universe was inside of us? What if after death and before birth, all space was inside? And all of that is really just a dimension. So when we think about it, what are we doing? You know, just laying down. Maybe someone was out shopping, went to the bank, was taking care of the children, and suddenly you create the conditions where there could be more dimension in space rather than time. So because the mind and the body are intrinsically linked together. A big trauma that we're healing in Western society is Western philosophy, and rationalism is based on the mind-body problem, that the mind and the body are separate from each other. And it was a French philosopher named René Descartes who formulated that had come from his mathematics that has influenced the thinking process. So there's something about the mind that actually has a state of awareness that if you were to listen to it, the transformation is happening there. I feel a lot of people can hear it, but they're not listening. And a lot of the listening space has to do with the emotional process. There's a transformation or a change that you yourself just deciding, I'm going to go into the middle of the circle and I'm going to speak my truth. And that brings about that transformation. So we're not healing anyone. There are no healers. We merely create the conditions where healing happens by itself. And right now we're experiencing it. And now that we're in dialogue, we're actually starting to understand what those conditions are. So thank you, Gatsi.
Thank you very much.
Maybe one last question if there's any, and then we can see you guys go into the experience.
After this question.
And if there's none, it's okay too. It would be good to lay down soon too. Yes.
Last one.
One more pie.
Mm.
No,
I can, maybe it's good for, just to make sure, maybe come forward. I can't hear perfectly.
Hi, Pai. Thank you so much for being here with us today. My question is very simple. What is your advice for all of us as new practitioners? If you can put it together in 1, 2, or 3 words, what is your biggest advice that you can give all of us?
Okay, thank you. I would share with you, let me write it down just so even the non-English speakers, oops, sorry. I would simplify it. It's a good way to close. All right, okay, thank you. Let's clean up. So where did this all begin? For me, where did it start? And this could be important for all those who are also starting. When I started this, I didn't know any of the sciences. I had no understanding of what was going to happen to me, but I was trusting. But I did have a perception. Yes, you can see it.
Bye. Just very quickly. No, we just continue. I just like to translate maybe this last word in Italian for the whole group. So
go ahead.
Sorry.
La pregunta era en italiano.
La domanda era quale consiglio ci potresti dare a tutti noi che iniziamo questa pratica a lavorare con persone?
So in the beginning, I was perceiving something in the world. Go ahead.
All'inizio io percepivo qualcosa del mondo, non avevo una base scientifica per tutto questo.
I believed that everything happens for a reason.
Però credevo che tutto quello che succede per una ragione, una causa.
Actually, we don't need this if you're translating. I believe that everything we need is already inside of us.
E tutto ciò che abbiamo bisogno è già dentro di noi.
I believe that everything was connected and nothing is separate.
Credevo già che tutto fosse connesso e niente è separato l'uno dall'altro.
I feel that when we were babies, this was the original knowing.
E credo che quando eravamo neonati era la conoscenza originale che portavamo con noi.
And so when you activate this state of awareness, we will go back to this original knowing.
Quindi quando attiviamo questo stato di awareness, di consapevolezza, grazie, torniamo indietro a quello stato di apertura di...
If you achieve this understanding that I would describe, then you would be able to trust.
E quando riesci a portare questo, ognuno è capace di avere anche la fiducia, perché parte da questo presupposto. Quindi se riusciamo a portarli, a aiutare a tornare lì, la fiducia è un risultato, è capace di farlo.
So no matter what you are doing and how you're doing it, if you have trust, even if you're doing the wrong thing, you're doing the right thing.
E non è importante alla fine quello che facciamo esattamente, ma se lo facciamo con la fiducia interiore, anche se lo facessimo male, per così dire, è la cosa giusta e arriva. Però c'è bisogno fondamentalmente della fiducia in voi stessi.
If you lose this awareness of the world as interconnected and one, and if you are not trusting, even if you're doing the right thing, you're doing the wrong thing.
E invece se perdiamo questa connessione e non vediamo più l'unità in tutto, ma separato in tutto, facciamo anche le cose giuste, bene, tecnicamente bene, ma sono sbagliate.
So no matter what is happening outside and inside, everything is happening for a reason, and everything you need is already there.
Quindi, ancora una volta, non ha importanza quello che succede, tutto quello che succede per una ragione e tutto quello che c'è bisogno è già qua, è già available, c'è già.
Grazie.
Grazie a te. Thank you very much by just circling around a bit. I don't know if you can see all of it's a marvelous space here in Tuscany. We are here for the first time.
Wow.
It's really a beautiful center with a very nice energy, feeling the whole in this group and also in the surroundings.
Yeah, the space is amazing. It's beautiful. It looks like a church. I thought it looked like a church in the beginning.
Yeah, it's a octagonal shape, like the lights up there.
Yes, the planets.
The planets, yes. The lights are very nicely set for the evening. Well, everything is done with real love, and we believe also lots of knowledge. The person who built it has been on a journey for many years on development. So
amazing.
Very lucky to be here.
Okay. So have a good journey. Siegfried, don't make the volume too loud for this one, but just above, the usual, but just a bit above conservative. But you'll know how to adjust. You'll know what I mean.
Yes.
And then you give me feedback
with the volume.
Yes. Okay.
Also to find the subtle tones.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's up to you. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
Sending
thank you very
love
much
from the islands.
again, and see you in the next meeting.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye.
Grazie.
Grazie.
Grazie.